Hey everyone, it's Amazing Race 36 time here on RHAP. It is me, Jessica Liese, and we have a great episode for you. Today we're going to be covering episode 2 of season 36, and we have a lot to talk about. Okay, all right, fine. We don't have a lot to talk about because it's 90 minutes of content in a 60 minutes of content in a 90-minute episode, but we'll do our best.
Yes.
But we have great guests. I'm very excited to introduce to the podcast. We have from season 34 of The Amazing Race, we have the great Liese and Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. No pressure on us. First episode that Rob is not here. No pressure on us, but we're still happy to be.
Yep.
Yeah. I can't think of a better set of people to inaugurate the Sesternino chair, as it were.
Oh, that's a big chair to fill.
That's why we had to get two of you.
We got 2 of us.
That works.
We'll fill it up. You fill it up a little bit over here, and I'll take the rest.
All right. And of course, with me as always is the mystery man, Mr. Mike Bloom. And once again, he has hidden himself from view like the Phantom of the Opera. And I'm really afraid of what's behind that reveal. So he might as well just get it over with.
I'm so excited.
The good news is I do have a shirt on. The bad
Thank
news
God.
is there is still a part of me you can see, and it is my bones.
Oh, look at that.
This is an effort. This is a much like every Amazing Race is all about a partnership. As Michelle says, it's a little bit of someone, it's a lot of another person. This little bit is me, and the rest of it is my wife, who did this in about 10 minutes time before I had to come on and do this. So
Better than most teams for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say, yeah. And luckily, I'm not schwitzing my butt off, at least as of yet. So we'll see. I might be looking like Derek by the end of this, just sopping wet and dripping from head to toe. But right now, I'm ready for Dia de los Muertos, as we're about to commemorate, the death of, unfortunately, one team by the end of this leg of the Amazing Race.
Yes, unfortunately. And I'm sorry, Jess. We also have a little something because, for Dia de los Muertos, we have to have Rob in our memory. So, Michelle, if you don't mind, I'm going to leave this picture of Rob behind us just to always... Rob has not left us, all right? Rob is still with us throughout this podcast forever and ever. And I try to pick the best picture that I could find of Rob. So this is... Do you guys know what Survivor season this is?
This is Survivor All-Stars, yeah, because Rob's first season he played in the middle of the Amazonian rainforest, so there wasn't the sea anywhere near there.
Yes.
He killed Rob.
Yeah. On this podcast. But so we're gonna have Rob back here. Excuse us. Our iPad is out of battery. So we're gonna be like touching the screen back here. We also have a little something, we try to find something to play around with Mike here. So we got some of these going on. There we go. Here you are, baby. Yes.
But wait, where are the red handkerchiefs? You have to do that in order to complete your task.
Yeah.
How can we forget? We just filled a task. And I don't have a luchador mask, but I did add these today. So I'm gonna live with you guys. I'm trying my best here to fit in, but we're excited to be here.
Oh, you already passed the test, in my opinion. I think if Rob wasn't not already abdicating his throne to a various amount of Amazing Race alumni, he has vacated the podcast at this point, being like, nope, not gonna touch that house right now.
He's out. Yeah, and I've decided now I'm officially never bringing a costume to the podcast because one person has to not.
Exactly.
All of us. It's a big giant costume party, Jess. Come on.
Exactly. Come on. It's a party all season long, and we get another. Yes. The party keeps on going. Quite literally in Mexico. This is all taking place within the same day. It's an exhausting episode of 24 that leaves a couple of people on the ground. Liese and Michelle, we're only 2 episodes in, but what are you thinking about Amazing Race 36 so far?
So, Mike, I'm a huge Amazing Race fan. I absolutely love the Amazing Race. After being on the Amazing Race, I saw the behind the scenes, so I love the show even more. But unfortunately, I have to say something negative. This episode was trash. I did not like this episode. It was a mega leg in the same city. There was no self-driving. There was no self-driving drama. These tasks were very simple. They delivered balloons and they face painted. And it dragged on. You could tell that this edit was supposed to be 60 minutes long. It dragged for me a bit. I'm not going to blame the Amazing Race producers and people. Maybe it's a budget issue. They have to make some simple tasks to save budget for throughout the season. So maybe it's a budget issue. How about that?
There was a moment where I looked at Lewis and I was like, I think I'm a little bored because the tasks weren't giving me what I wanted. And it sucks because they were stuck in COVID. So we go to a non-COVID season and then come back to COVID. So it's very difficult to do tasks with people in the town and everything because they still have to be careful. But I will say the characters in this season are giving me a little bit of what I do want.
Yes.
I love the characters I love the cousins. I love how feisty they are and crazy all over the place they are. I love our dudes. Dudes. And just in general, I love seeing the characters when the race isn't giving me that in the challenges.
Yeah, I think they really make up for some of the deficits by casting a really great bunch of people this season. And it could also be, I wonder if maybe every season we get people this great, but we don't have enough time to give them the character moments they deserve.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I mean, to Lewis's point, it's interesting that this is airing at the same time as Survivor 46, which I think right now, not to speak too out of pocket about other CBS reality shows, is kind of suffering from the same thing, namely getting to see sort of like shows that were kind of structured with 60-minute episodes in mind being extended out to 90 minutes and trying to figure out how you fill out that runtime. Included in like sort of the awkward pacing of this episode, the fact that we had, Rod and Leticia run basically the entire leg through the first half of the episode and then disappear is a little odd in terms of pacing. And then on top of that, I think something that has been levied a bit with Survivor 46 especially is that we've got a lot of mess going on with a few of these teams in particular. I know that eventually, I think especially with having a bit more of an equalizer with the move to Colombia next week, that I think we're going to have a bit more of an ability for these teams to mix in. But we talked about this last week, Jess, and I'm sure you two experienced this as well with the mega legs, where sometimes with that, the rich get richer and the poor tend to get poorer in terms of just consistently running throughout the day. Allows those that were doing well to continue to do well and those who are falling behind to continue to do so. Now, this one at least had a lot of shakeups due to navigation and misinterpretation of what bridge names are. That caused a little bit of a shakeup in the placement, but
or what a bridge is.
Exactly. But I was not terribly surprised that, the top 4 teams are going to be the same between both of these legs here.
I mean, I will quibble with you, Mike. Did we get a lot of mix-ups? Did we really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like the top 5 teams started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, continued to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way until they checked in at the mat.
I thought 5 was Michelle and Sean, though. They fell a long way down to second to last place.
Yeah, Michelle and Sean finishing at 11. So that's probably the only team that really dropped off. And then you see Amber and Vinny really take a little bump. They went from 12 to 7. There's some mix up there, but pretty much maybe I see all the teams probably in the same spot around there.
I need some of these mess teams to have a really lucky leg. I guess that's what I'm saying. I want somebody to just stumble their way up to second or third place and kick out a team that's doing better that isn't as terrible.
Yeah. I'm rooting for Anthony and Bailey to do that.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about
Here
that.
for it.
I'm really intrigued though, Lewis and Michelle. So obviously you have experience in as you mentioned, the sort of COVID era of the Amazing Race, which again was a bit more shortened in terms of tasks. You ran a couple mega legs, including one in a Spanish speaking country, the Malaga mega leg, if you will. I'm super curious, from your perspective, is it harder or easier to race in a course that has fewer tasks in it? Because I can imagine on the one hand, then you're really dependent on if you do well on those or not. On the other hand, there are fewer tasks for you to screw up.
Yeah. I guess it depends on the team. For us, we loved getting to tasks because we did believe in our ability to finish them, right? But then again, if there's more tasks, there's more navigating. And navigating is not fun, especially for all the self-drive that they're doing, that they're going to do this season. It's going to be tough with more self-driving. So what do you think, babe? Do you think?
Yeah, what I will say is what I do know about this season is that they didn't really get maps. And on our season, we almost got maps every single time. So we would stop after navigation and we would basically write everything down and you would just get lost within there. I feel like them not getting maps is what's really getting them lost, because they're just asking someone, where do I go? And that person points, and then they're like, okay, I'm going to go to where they pointed. And then they have no idea where they're going on. I feel like people are looking at navigation, like actually looking at the GPS. And I told Lewis, I Google mapped the place and I didn't even know exactly what it was called. And it popped up and you see a clear picture of it. So I do feel like a lot of the teams are just
it's first like
word of the, yeah, they're getting the word of the mouth of the people in the streets.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were given maps, because it's always been the case that you're supposed to use your like per diem money to buy your own stuff. And I guess this may also be a COVID casualty, where it's like they don't want you just going into every gas station and interacting with everybody.
Exactly.
But it's interesting to me that everybody is still at this point in our timeline, in our strange, convoluted, Amazing Race chronology, that people are now having to contend with that, because I think both teams in exit interviews have said now that they wish they had stopped and gotten a map.
Yeah. And we should mention as well, Jess, you got the chance to talk with our eliminated team, Chris and Mary, earlier today. How were they for you?
Oh, they're so fun. They're so nice. They were really excited about the experience. And, you know, even Phil said in his pre-season interviews that he thought they were there for a good time, not a long time. And they still, you know, they were so happy to have gotten to do it at all. And they were just so much fun to talk to, had great stories, really, really great people.
Yeah, that's the thing that I really took away as well from my interview was, first off, again, like the almost like down to earth realism they had about their situation. They explicitly said, like, if we made it past this leg, we make it maybe one more leg and then we're gone. And like that's such an interesting concept to me. I mean, Lewis and Michelle, like I would imagine you go on to the show with at least some expectation to win, but I could think that especially when, with no offense to Chris, they're looking around at their competition, which includes an ex-NFL star and, you know, jacked military bros. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to go for as many countries as we can.
Yeah, that mindset is definitely not how we play the Amazing Race. You know, we're there to win it. We expected to win. Obviously, we didn't. But a fun fact: they were alternates, kind of like Aubrey and David from our season. They only had 3 days to get ready. They got the phone called, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but they were just a last minute cast, and they didn't have that much time to prepare. So maybe that was their mindset because of that. But yeah,
I think mindset is a huge thing, because once you throw in the towel, you just keep going down and down. So if for example, you see Team Walla Walla, it's still mom and her son, and they're thriving off of wanting to win the race. And in this episode, you clearly see it when they're running down the street next to Vinny and Amber.
Yeah.
And they're running next to them, and they're taking their time. They're taking it slow. They're asking for directions. And Vinny and Amber go one way, they go another. And who gets there first? Team Walla Walla. So if you really want something, you can achieve it on the race. And you don't have to be the NFL team or the fastest racer or the smartest. You just have to play it like good.
Well, this dovetails pretty interestingly with something that Chris and Mary did say to me, which was that they didn't feel like they did a lot of sprinting and running around, but they felt like any team, like physical fitness is not necessarily a thing that you need to have in order to dominate. If you can be very efficient about what you're doing and you can do it correctly the first time, it's much better than if you have to go running all over the place to get where you're going and make a lot of, switch up what you're doing midstream. And they said that was what they thought really sunk them more than any kind of perceived like physical strengths or weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think definitely compounded for them, unfortunately, was a bit of the exhaustion, was the fact that they, like, obviously put their all into just surviving that first leg, only to be told by Phil, hey, I hope you like Puerto Vallarta, because you're about to see a lot more of it by foot. I mean, Lewis, Michelle, talk about that process of, like, trying to push along throughout the day, especially because, like, the heat is really going to be the main factor here.
Yeah, those teams looked exhausted. I mean, they were Mexico, I want to say sometime in September, which is grueling. And
I
they
heard
got
actually,
that.
I believe somebody did the fact. I think it was up to like 84 degrees, but like with the humidity. I mean, they say it's not the heat, it's the humidity, right? And I think that was what was really getting people.
Exactly. Being from Miami, we know exactly how. At least for us, we were mentally prepared in the beginning of the race that it was a mega leg. So from when you opened the first clue, we saw it's your first mega leg. Today is a mega leg, so you had time to kind of mentally prepare. At least for them, it must have sucked getting to a mat saying, "Yes, we're finally here. Day one is over," and Phil just hands you over another clue. That must be gut wrenching.
Especially if you've left it all out on the field, and now it's like, no, you need to go back onto the field and get some more of it.
Yes.
Well, I'm curious. I want to know what the two of you think about the lack of non-elimination legs.
So at first, because I feel like this happened on the heels of Aruna Natalia, a team that got saved, I don't know how many times. I mean, they got eliminated, came back, was last and got saved from non-elimination legs I think another 3 times. And the crowd was not happy with that, right? So I really liked the pressures of watching non-elimination legs, but it's also fun not knowing, right? When the team steps on the mat, will they be eliminated? Or do they have another chance? I like this team. Or no, I hope this team goes home. Oh no, this team that I hate is staying because it's a non-elimination. So my feelings are back and forth. I think after Aruna Natali season, I was rooting for this, but now I kind of miss it. What do you guys feel?
I definitely miss it. I want to be surprised when someone gets to the mat and not know if they are going to be eliminated or not. But I feel like a lot of these teams already know if that's going to happen. So you automatically see their sadness or reaction knowing that they're the last ones. And as a viewer, I would like it. And as a racer, I would like it as well.
I think it's all a matter of just varying it up. I liked it when it first came around because I think the non-elimination leg is still contentious. We have people coming in from reality shows, someone like the In Absentia Rob, who's like, I like when an episode ends with an elimination. That feels like the way that every story should conclude in this type of show. But coming in from the beginning of The Amazing Race, to Michelle's point, I like the sort of variability, the sort of up in the air aspect of, okay, you never know what might happen and how that sort of instills in the teams as well. I do think, sometimes teams do feel like they're in last no matter what. Apparently, according to Chris and Mary, they did not think they were in last. They told me about a moment where they had apparently gotten out ahead of Michelle and Sean and were like, oh, okay, this is it. I think we're going to get it. And then it turned out that that wasn't the case. I think they got sort of like lost in transit along the way. So that surprise is still there. Phil did tease to me that non-elimination legs were not gone forever. And so I do think it's sort of like just a final 3 versus a final 2 in Survivor. I'm fine with sort of like varying it, not sticking to one hard and fast rule forevermore, and maybe just varying it up from time to time, or sort of compromising and doing like 1, maybe 2 non-elimination legs a season.
Yeah, I could deal with 1 or 2 because I like that if you're in last, you still have to run it out. And Chris and Mary also said that their only incentive at the end when they realized that they probably were getting eliminated, all they wanted to do is make sure Phil didn't have to come to them. And I feel like maybe that's not quite enough of an incentive at that point. Like you need to feel like there might be a chance. There should always be at least a little bit of a chance.
I mean, the good news is with these teams, a quarter of which had trouble getting to the pit stop, there's almost always going to be a chance. I do want to ask one more thing to Liz Michelle before we start getting into both of these tests in this leg, because we are dealing with a truncated route, talk about the COVID era, but we talked about this last week that will majorly take place in Spanish-speaking countries. And we saw that when the two of you were in Spain, you definitely benefited from a knowledge of the language. Do you expect sort of a similar thing to happen with teams like, seeing Juan and Shane and Ricky and Cesar, for example?
I do. 100%. I think with the amount of Spanish-speaking countries here, it's going to be a huge advantage for these teams. Like for us in Spain, it's just easier, right? And isn't it funny that I'm sorry, the team Victor and Jocelyn, right? Victor and Jocelyn were getting so much crap last season for knowing the language in Asian countries, but Ricky and Cesar hasn't got any negative feedback yet. I think Victor's really mad at this this. But overall, it's just a lot easier. Like, the languages. Like, how can it get easier than that? And the amount of Spanish-speaking countries.
Yeah, you can definitely go up to anyone if you know the native language, And then, for example, I don't know how this COVID season will be, but for us, they separated us from like big towns. So in those small towns, those people do not speak English. They're like, they've been living in a farm or wherever they're at all their lives. All they know is the native language. So I remember in one of the challenges when we were in France, we were trying to go stop at houses where we would see people outside, and they didn't understand us whatsoever. They were speaking to us in French, and we had to try and find a local spot where people were staying in either hotels or something to get information. So imagine these people who speak Spanish. Will get information right away, and that's minutes that you save on the race. And minutes help you get a long way.
And you know what's funny? People always tell us like, oh, look at these Spanish-speaking, all these Spanish-speaking countries. Don't you wish you were on the season? I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I've already been to Mexico. My family's Colombia. I don't want to go to Colombia for the amazing race. I want to go to Europe. I want to go to Asia. Take me to Jordan. Take me to Iceland. And we did pretty good without knowing the languages in all these countries.
I told you the same thing too.
I was like, oh my God, we would have killed it in season 35. But like Michelle, we killed it anyways. We just couldn't play the piano.
Yeah, well, it's true. I think that if you are walking down the streets of Paris and you need directions, you can probably ask someone in English and get directions easier than you can in a farm in the middle of nowhere, for sure.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I think what's unique this season is that how many teams speak Spanish. And I find it interesting as someone who can understand spoken Spanish, cannot speak a word of it. It's really funny to me to listen to like the different degrees of proficiency, like people that are practically native speakers and people that took it in high school. I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take it up to the top of the episode. I Google Mapped this in preparation, and this entire episode takes place over about like 16 square blocks.
Oh yeah, you want me to
one neighborhood?
To show it because I know you shared the.
Oh yeah, I did give you the Google map. I don't know how well this translates to a screen, but
no, I think we can take a bit of a look here, a bit of a look-see at what you sent me.
Yep.
So this is Iguana Bridge, right? This Puente Iguana.
Yeah, I can't see what you're doing, Mike.
Oh, yeah. You can't see what I'm doing. Oh, I should probably share it. There we go.
Nice.
First
Okay.
episode without RHAP, everybody.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, all right. So yeah, we have Iguana Bridge is like up at the top of the map here. And it is weirdly, they all had to double back after it. And then as you get like on the other side of the bridge, like the little marketplace is kind of directly south of there. And then the park that they had to go to do the face painting is down by the beach. And so it's a really tiny area, but it's also like, if you're not sure what you're looking for, and I think this is where everybody got tripped up. It's like, there's several bridges here and they don't know which one is the Iguana Bridge because it's not terribly well labeled. I didn't even see, was there an actual iguana on it?
So what I saw, if I remember correctly, is like the sign that they kept cutting to had iguanas on it. But I don't know if there's like a giant iguana on it like we had with the dragons last season or anything like that. So that was probably the major thing to trip up the teams is when they hear Iguana Bridge, they're looking for some sort of, lizard-based iconography when really the iguana is implied over anything.
I just feel like at the end of the day, asking people to point doesn't get you anywhere. Get their phones, like Michelle said earlier in the podcast, get their phones, look at a picture of this bridge. You Google map it and it shows up there, pull up some Google images, and that will help you so much. And I feel like some teams didn't do that. Once again, it's probably first leg jitters.
Yeah, definitely. And the cousins getting to this second challenge to the roadblock.
I think we're going to get into that.
But I just want to make a quick remark about it. Iguana Bridge. You keep saying, is this Iguana Bridge? But they're not actually on a bridge.
No, Louis, I think you bring up such a good tip that I personally don't see teams do, but probably do it. Is like don't just look for directions, image search what the place looks like.
Yes.
You know, I do this all the time with like parking garages in New York City of like, okay, there's so many of them. When I get to there, I will probably get anxious as all get out and not know where to go. What roof am I looking for? What does the sign say? What am I looking like? Especially in a place like this 8-block radius, which apparently is just full of bridges and nothing else. It makes sense that you want to find like the exact architecture that's behind it.
Exactly. You get the images, you have to get the exact distance, how many minutes it takes to go from one point to the other. Get all that information the first time. You know, I feel like teams are really hesitant to do that because the person you're asking for directions has to sign a waiver, and that takes time. Just get it right the first time, get all the information you can, and that's going to help you finish the leg.
Right, because also if you have to ask somebody else again, then that person also has to sign the release.
Exactly. And to be honest, it's pretty fast. As long as you don't ask a group of 6 people in a family, you know, that's because you have to sign a waiver for each person in that family. So try to find one person that's hanging out, chilling by themselves. The waiver process will be a lot faster, and you get the information you need like that.
Yeah, there was a point where Rod went to go ask for directions, and there was a group of like 4 or 5 asking, trying to tell him like over here, and he was like, shh.
I love that. Yeah. Everybody's like, Ricky and Cesar have been on our butts this entire leg. Do not give away any information right now.
But at the same time, what I was thinking as a racer was I just see 4 to 5 people in this shot in the camera, meaning they all had to sign waivers in order for this shot to come out. So yeah, you have to be careful with that in the race.
Yeah, that is the kind of thing I feel like you would never know that unless you'd actually been on the show.
Yeah, agreed.
For sure.
We learned it the hard way.
Yeah. And there was a point. Now, was I reading this part right where you had Derek and Shalisa are arguing and they're a little bit lost, and then this random dude comes out of nowhere and gives them a map unsolicited?
Where was that guy for Chris and Chris
Mary,
and Mary? Where was that guy?
There's the thing. There's only one time where a group of people with a camera crew stop by and you can give away free maps. I think this guy's like, hey, shine your camera upon my sign. You know, let's advertise this company, the Good Samaritans that will give away free maps to Americans. We're not going to do it for anybody. That was wild. I mean, yeah, you talk about like gifts from above, given a free, because I know that some teams I think had bought some paper maps. They took some time out of the first leg to do that, which ended up paying off tenfold when they have to keep on racing through Puerto Vallarta. But here's a guy just giving it away for free, man.
And one thing I just didn't understand about Derek and Shalisa, like they got the map and they couldn't find the spot on the map of where they had to go to next. How about you ask the guy that gave you the map? So I'm not sure if they did that at some point, but they should have done that a little bit quicker.
Oh no, I just give away the maps. I don't know anything about them.
But we definitely have to give them a little bit of leeway these first 2 episodes because it did take us like 1 or 2 to get these little hints in there.
Yeah, I think we're still seeing people like kind of shaking the jitters off at this point. It's going to be another week or 2 before people are like fully in the zone.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how long did it take the 2 of you?
Oh man, the first leg jitters, that was the most nervous. The first leg and the last leg were the most nerves I've ever felt in my life. And I'm talking about, I don't mean to brag, but I've been to burning buildings. And that's but this was way more nervous than I've ever felt. And for us, I think after the first leg, we kind of got in the zone.
I mean, in the first leg, I think I wrote down in the map with a pen mark. My mark was so small that I couldn't find it later on. So when we got in the car, I was like, go to this first place because I can't find the other places we marked. It was bad. It's just you don't think about the small things that make a big difference.
I think that's a really good indicator. That is sort of a reminder that, listen, as a bit of a disclaimer, as much as we're probably going to clown on some of these teams for the mistakes that they make over the course of the leg, like it does happen to nearly everybody. I mean, we are talking with 2 people who came in second, third to last in the very first leg and then went on to place 3rd. So the Amazing Race is a show that succeeds on volatility, right? In which you start every leg with the chance that you could be first or you could be last. So I'm hopeful that a change in scenery is going to shake things up a little bit. And, there's a chance that even we saw with Amber and Vinny or Juan and Shane in the last leg, like you just got to have a couple of good tasks and shake off those initial jitters and you can do fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope it's okay that we clown on some of these teams just a bit. And because I was fine if you guys clowned on me. I literally had my wife push my car in reverse because I did not know how to put the car in reverse. And I laugh at that. You can laugh at me all you want. But we're gonna laugh at these teams a little bit.
Sure, we clown because we love.
It's all love.
It's not an indictment of anybody's character.
And also, come on, like the clown face paint meme is perfect in a roadblock where they are literally painting their faces of, Karishma and Kishori sitting there being like, I'm pretty sure this is Iguana Bridge. Nope, it's gotta be the bridge.
But isn't that the best thing about Amazing Race is when they make you dress up in some ridiculous outfit? I mean, okay, present company will dress up in a ridiculous outfit for no reason, but
yes.
then
you
are...
Yeah. I'm sorry. Could you imagine being just a random tourist there and seeing a huge 6'5" black man with butterfly wings on his back? Like that must have been. They must have saw him run by and be like, "What's going on?"
Well, that's what Anthony and Bailey were saying, right? They were sort of like, I don't think I could talk to anybody looking like this. I look like someone's LSD nightmare.
Dude, you asked, dude. I don't want to do it, dude.
Yeah, and then not only that, but you were like in this pressure cooker of a race situation, and you start having an argument with each other while you're dressed in ridiculous outfits, or like the iconic moment from I think season 10 when they're in Barcelona with the tomatoes and they're just screaming at each other and people are throwing tomatoes at them.
That must have hurt.
Yeah, like the possibility to be, we enjoy the pressure cooker, we enjoy the ridiculous outfits. I feel like the two together is like peanut butter and chocolate.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful.
It's beautiful.
I feel like we're beating around the bush to not talk about this detour because let's be honest,
what do we have to say about the detour, honestly?
I mean, was it a detour or was it more so just like, hey, you should probably do this one thing, and if you don't do this one thing, you made a mistake?
I agree. And at what point do you fail the balloon task? Like, what if you approach the final judge with one balloon? Do you still pass? Like, I feel like so many teams have balloons pop and nothing. They were okay. I just don't get the design.
Yeah, maybe it was a certain amount of balloons. That's what I'm thinking.
It didn't look like they pounded them. It just.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So as a quick run through, so the detour choice was between balloon connection, which is you basically have to, as will turn out for some teams, just go back the way you came, retrace your steps, collecting 6 total bunches of balloons along the way, versus color correction, which is you go to like this entire square that has with a papel picata, which are just like these cutout flags. You get a string of them, and basically you have to find the one strand amongst this. So it's like needle in a haystack combined with that super meticulous attention to detail. Find the one that doesn't match.
Yeah, Mike, I'm still trying to figure out if it was color or a pattern. I'm still confused about that task.
They couldn't even really visually convey it when the firefighters did get it correct. There was just this picture of like all of these flags that flashed very briefly on the screen. It was like, what even is that?
That was also my favorite lower third, which was like, not the same. Like it's such an awkward phrasing for it. Yeah, so I think to answer your question, Michelle, I think it was the order of the colors. It was that, okay, this string is pink, green, yellow, red, blue. Apparently, there are so many other flags out there that go in that exact same order, except for one, and you have to find it. The problem was the vagueness. And the reason why so many teams end up giving up is like, you have Angie and Danny literally holding up the flags, cross-comparing them, being like, okay, is it the pattern that we should be looking out for? This is sort of like the double-edged sword that comes with hyper preparedness and super fandom, right? Is that like, you are expecting there to be some sort of catch or something that you might be missing. And so sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes you do the mail rail with pen holderness, and you're like, sometimes a clue is a clue. Sometimes you just have to look at the colors instead of looking at every single pattern.
Yes, and thank God Sunny and Busy actually finished this task, because we still wouldn't know to this day if it was color or if it was the artwork. But we also saw, I was going to say, I'm sorry. We saw that Sunny and Busy stuck with it. I feel like so many teams make that error of staying at a task for so long, and then they want to change after they're not sticking through it. And props to them for staying there, and props for the other teams. It looks like they switched the detours pretty quickly.
Yeah, do you have, because this really varies with teams, and even teams have broken the rule. I forget last season, maybe it was Joe and Ian that like, okay, our rule is 30 minutes, and then they stayed for like 2 hours. Did you ever have a rule as to when you would switch detour, when you pull that ripcord?
It wasn't an exact time, but
Right away.
yeah, first right away, whatever you want to call right away. I think it's 10 minutes max.
Yeah.
10 minutes max, because you want to switch right away. Can I talk about Rod and Leticia's strategy to picking this detour? Did you guys see that?
Yes, let's do this.
The paper, rock, scissors. Yeah, that was interesting. That's a good way to just pick something when you guys are at a stalemate. But how funny would it be if they tied 50 times and, teams are just running past them and they're still playing paper, rock, scissors? I mean, it's very unlikely, but I don't know.
I wonder if they had a time limit for that.
Maybe.
What do you think about that, Jess? Because detours, as Phil Kogan said from the very beginning, are supposed to be weighing out the pros and cons, and they just sort of like eschew that in favor of random chance.
Yeah, are they going to do this every leg is the question that I would have, because I feel like it then becomes that like thing with the people that, they live their entire lives by like rolling a dice every time they need to make a decision.
Two-Face?
Yeah. Two-Faced. Flip a coin. I think it's almost like they're kind of posturing a little bit. I feel like they're saying we are all around awesome. We will be good at no matter what we do. So it doesn't really matter which one we take. We're just going to pick whatever, and we're still going to rock it.
I mean, I'm glad that whatever happened here had them avoiding paper, even if someone threw it, because they end up making the right decision. To go back to, the balloons, I mean, I definitely think something of you pop a certain number of balloons and you have to go back would have been ideal, because it seemed so straightforward. It seemed like Kashuri and Karishma were like the only people that really struggled finding the balloons in the first place. The only counter would be like, if production's like, well, we already used half the day and we don't want to have these teams doing stuff into the night, that they just kind of want to sweep them through as much as possible. But then why give them like this incredibly vague other side of the detour to do?
Yeah, well, there's also the fact that almost everybody that walked to the Iguana Bridge through the craft market looked at every single balloon station as they're walking in, and they're like, oh, wait, those are the balloon stations, so we know where they all are. There's no reason to even look at the other task.
This is very good point, Jess. That happened to us in Jordan, where we went the wrong way. We saw the building of the cart stations before we did the dance, and we were just like, okay, I guess I know who's doing this detour. I'm going to be building. But I guess you're right. I didn't notice that the teams were passing the balloons as they were going to the clue box. That helps.
Yeah, that was a big thing for Ricky and Cesar, who I think, again, are like probably thinking through these detour choices the best way so far, where they're like, let's just go with the known. And we've seen that. I could see some teams take the flags initially because they're like, we just walked a butt ton. I don't want to keep walking. I want to rest a little bit, especially for those, again, who are not so cardio inclined. But at the same time, this was yet again like a really open and shut, easy decision to make in retrospect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this does go with like the traditional Amazing Race wisdom, contrary to last week, where it's like, here is the physical task, and you know how long that's going to take, and you know what it entails, as opposed to the one where your brain might be, the hamster wheel might turn for a long time before you figure out what the thing is.
Yeah.
So
Derek, I think, literally says that in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, physical is tough, but it's straightforward.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but here's another like way of thinking about it. They were in, let's say, a mega leg. So, for example, being exhausted, sometimes you don't want to do the physical task because it's been such a long day, or it's really hot and you don't want to do the physical task. So trying to think of like the flip side of it, maybe that's why another person would choose the mental task.
I think that's definitely why a lot of the teams in the back did choose it. And for a second, like so many teams were in that back half were choosing the flags that I almost thought, did they run out of balloons? Was this like a limited station situation? Until they all started switching back.
Yeah, I mean, should it have been limited stations, Jess? I know that you're a fan of those.
All detours should be limited stations detours.
I mean, these teams might still be there a year and a half after the fact if this was a limited stations detour.
They're still trying to find a bridge.
They're trying to figure out what the difference is.
Phil would have come and got them, and everybody would have been sad. Nobody wants Phil to come and get you in the field. Let's see. So it's something that you just brought up about Jordan. This kind of reminds me, I mean, this is going to segue into something we're going to have to talk about because it's about the only interesting thing that happened this leg, is when you are in a city and you are doing Amazing Race, there are camera crews and stations and clue boxes and things set up in different places in the city. And I feel like it almost makes it easier for you to get where you're going because you know, like, oh, they're filming a TV show over there, and everybody around you knows they're filming a TV show. They just be like, there's where the cameras are. I think this may be where these two teams got tripped up looking for the Iguana Bridge. People are like, well, there's cameras down there. Go where the cameras are.
Yeah. You're running for so many minutes or hours, and you see a clue box, and you just say, "Hooray, we found a clue box!" But yeah, it looks like this route for this leg was very scattered in the same area, so they got confused. But it was a little disheartening for Michelle and Sean for me because I feel like this team was really strong coming in here, but they would still be there if it wasn't for Kishori and Karishma being so situational aware of what's going on. And it was a little bit aggravating for me because I'm rooting for Michelle and Sean,
Yeah,
but
team, fellow red team.
Yeah, yep. The red team, yes, my red team. And Kishori was the one that's asking questions. She figured it out. She's running out of there, and they're still face painting. Like, get out of there. Run. You're in the wrong spot.
Yeah, it was so interesting to watch that scene where, Juan and Shane come in to break the news and watch the two teams' reactions and, like, have both teams for a second kind of freeze and be like, but, like, should we still do this? Can we still do this? Which, like, it's not allowed. Like, you're not able to do this is not a scramble. You can't do the roadblock first and then go do the detour and not have any recompense from it. But it was so interesting you could see almost like, again, the gears turn in their head and kind of like that fight or flight mode activate in both of them where like Kishori's like, but should we keep going? Krishna's like, no, this is wrong. And then to have Michelle and Sean be like, yeah, I guess wipe off the paint. There's that initial wave of confusion.
I think you should stop doing my makeup.
Well, here's my question. Here's my question. Did she have to wipe off all his makeup? Could she do like half of it and then go do the task and come back and be halfway done with the roadblock?
Yeah, I think by the time they would have done that task and come back, all that makeup would have been off his face anyways. but that's a great question. Who knows? I think they were just happy to be in shape. I think that was what was going on.
But yeah, I mean, it's tough. This was something that had been revealed. I actually posted like a sneak peek of this earlier in the day, and I was nervous. I mean, this could easily be a death knell for a team, right? Like, it's one thing to miss a location. It's another one to start doing a task, get halfway through, and realize you missed not only just like a route marker, stop by and pick up this clue, an entire ass detour, which could take an even longer time. Luckily, both teams, I think, are able to benefit from some of the other hot mess stuff that's happening with these other teams. But I'm curious, Lewis and Michelle, when they find out, are you in that moment thinking like, well, one of these two teams are definitely going?
Oh, I feel like yeah, it was either, and Chris and Mary were in the bottom three for me that episode. But yeah, that's a deal breaker. If you start doing a task that you're not supposed to do, and basically, that's just too much time off your race. What was the last time that happened? Was last season with Anna Lee when she got U-turned? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, but that was less so like you missed something and more so like you technically didn't complete this side of the detour. Yeah. Otherwise, just like I'm hard pressed to think of the last time we saw someone actually outright skip a task and go out of order.
We've seen it. I mean, the iconic one is obviously in All Stars, when you had Dustin and Candace do the entire river rafting trip and then have to go back and get the clue. But that wasn't even like, that was missing a clue. It wasn't like missing an entire task because they actually did the task. They just had to go back and get their clue. They didn't have to go back and do anything. So it is kind of unprecedented here, as far as I can tell. I mean, I skimmed Reddit and people didn't really have a good example of this happening in the past.
I also wonder like how long they would have been there for. Like they ask for a check after they're done doing the makeup, and does the judge even come over does a producer step in and say, hey, you're in the wrong spot? Like, at what point does it stop? I never read that in the rules, so I don't know. And this never happened to us, but I'm curious at how long that would have taken for them to realize they're in the wrong spot.
The few times that it's happened before, they've gotten all the way to Phil, and Phil tells them. Also, the season 20 finish line.
Oh yeah, that's true. Hey, go back. You gotta do your other roadblock.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
what would have happened if they got to Phil was, I believe right now detours are a 6-hour penalty. So they would not have told them to go back. They would have just said, like, I think it's tough. I think it would have been a call on the field that the producers would have stepped in, especially in leg 2. They wouldn't want to assess that penalty onto anybody, so they'd be like, okay, no, Ixnay on the Ikup May, go ahead back and do that detour. Otherwise, like, if they had proceeded forward, they would have gotten to Phil at Casa Kimberly, and he'd be like, great, take a seat, wait it out, let's see what happens.
But would they have gotten that clue?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Would they ever get approved, or they just keep saying no to them?
I mean, I think they would have. When Dustin and Candace did the thing, they got the clue because the people on site didn't know. Like, there are producers on site, but I don't think that it was like, okay, you completed the task, you get the clue. I don't know if Phil would have assessed them a penalty at that point. I think this leg did not take 6 hours to complete. If this leg took 3 hours to complete,
I would say maybe even like the accumulation of legs 1 and 2 probably didn't take 6 hours to complete.
Probably not. No.
Yeah.
Because it was, it was morning. The sun was up when they started in the morning, and it was noon when the team started leaving. So it's probably at that point, I think it's easier from a production standpoint to just send them back and make them do the task.
Yeah, it's also, I know producers communicate through like text messages or things like that, but they don't know exactly what's happening in between. They try and, I guess, get updated through the messages. So I guess what you guys are saying might be right. They might give them the clue because they don't even know that they haven't gone to their detour. So they'll prove them, and then Phil will know that they didn't do the detour, and then he'll send them back. I think that's the order of things that it would happen.
What did you guys think about the roadblock? Again, this is sort of like a typical thing that we see either on a literal face paint or put on makeup. We even saw this a bit with like the beard speed bump that the blondes did in season 32. I feel like the balance is always, as we saw with Ricky and we saw with Amber, right? Like being detailed versus being fast. And listen, I think we saw a lot of faces pass that maybe wouldn't ordinarily.
Exactly. That's always been my strategy. I'm not in the Amazing Race. I would never be a perfectionist. I'm sure you guys remember in Jordan when I finished that cart, my cart fell apart. I got approved, but my cart fell apart 30 feet away from the detour task, from the roadblock task. And basically, that strategy of just get it done, see what the judge says is the best strategy when it comes to racers. That's what you got to do.
I think there's a good.
I built that cart twice, by the way, and still got first place.
I think there's a level of being too detailed and being too like Lewis also, because we got lucky in that point, right? Because we had Aubrey and David on our backbone. Right?
Yeah, and then we question that as well of like, oh, should they have allowed to push their car to the pit stop if it falls apart after the roadblock?
Yeah.
But one thing I will say is the cart was complete after we took it to the pit stop. The second time. We saw some carts that were a little janky when they got there. But I think there's a level of not doing it too bad or doing it too good, because then if you get stuck there and you keep getting no's because you weren't detailed enough, you never know with the race. So it has to be like that good middle point.
Yeah, I think, Jess, for me, I would rather, especially early on, and especially if you're in a position like Ricky, where you are like 2 people down, like be as detailed as you want to be. Take your time, because we see with Sunny and Busy, like they really have a day from hell, and it's hot as hell, considering that like they have a tough time at the detour. And then you have, I think it's Busy who's doing the roadblock, just really not see the forest for the trees and just keep screwing up 1 or 2 times. And as a result, seems to have the toughest time out of anybody with this roadblock. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think you need to try to do the thing that's going to keep you out of your own head. And whether that is, get a check immediately or make sure you've got it as perfect as possible. I think it really depends on the situation, what the thing is, and how upset it's going to make you. Because there's certain things that it's no problem to paint this thing, make it look exactly like this other thing, if you're one type of person.
We should also say, like, was there a setting spray there? And if so,
Yeah,
how many
it looked
teams?
like it.
Because I think maybe some teams did not benefit, and perhaps from a gender perspective, they didn't necessarily know what it was, because the sweat was a big problem for especially a lot of these guys getting their makeup done.
What is this setting spray? I have no idea what you're talking about.
It holds the makeup better.
Oh, it holds it.
Yeah.
What Juan was applying
Yes.
after.
Yeah.
God.
And you didn't have to, but you could.
So another thing Lewis and I were looking at was we saw I'm sorry, I'm still learning names. The double dutchers hold up the flowers to, was it them? They held up the flowers.
It was Sunny and Busy as well.
Oh, yeah. So we were wondering, like, was that part of the task too? Because I don't think we saw a lot of teams do that. But it would have been very interesting to let that be the last thing that people aren't doing in the task.
Yeah, they could have maybe come up with ways to make this roadblock
a little trick.
more challenging.
Yeah, and that again is really the typical trap of like, okay, I don't want to get tricked by not having the flowers in. So even though this technically isn't a headdress, I'm gonna attach these flowers to your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the difference between, thinking you just have to match the colors and like getting exactly the right number of red dots going around the outside. Because how many times has there been a task where it's been like there's one tiny thing that you're not missing? And also, I think it's hilarious that Michelle, you do not know the names of the double dutchers when the woman in the double dutch couple is named Michelle.
Oh my God.
Her name is Michelle.
Who's also wearing red.
Yeah,
I think it
incidentally.
took me the whole entire episode, and at the end of the episode, I was like, "Oh my God, the red team has a Michelle too." My brain is all over the place.
That's fine. Listen, you're in the same space as a lot of these teams. You've had your own mega leg. I also just love, like, Derek in particular was going through it, and just like the imagery of just his sopping wet face, looking like a Salvador Dali painting by the end of this. The thing about these tasks as well is that like the judging is very variable. We see honestly someone like Karishma probably get away with a bit more than she probably should have been allowed because she was in the back of the pack. And Derek was probably part of that as well, where I'm agreeing with Shalisa. I'm seeing her painting and I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna pass this. You might have to wipe clean again and start from the start.
And same thing with Rosetta. Like half of his face is a beard. So Ricky had a lot less room to work with, and they probably use a lot less paint, and they still got past. It's a lot of variables in this one, but
it's interesting that they didn't. There was a task, season 23. The Afghanimals were going to do a makeup task, and then they didn't do it because they said they had to shave their beards.
And they went back to the other task.
So it's interesting to me that you don't have to do that for this one. But I guess you also have the option, like you could choose the person that doesn't have a beard. I mean, that Cesar and Ricky are kind of screwed there. They both have beards, but
yeah.
Yeah, I did. It did remind me of that, and for a hot second I thought they were going to impose that on them. But
I mean, like Joel
can't.
and Garrett would have had a really tough time with this, right?
Yeah.
And that's Joel's moneymaker. He's definitely not shaving that.
Neither Garrett either. Yeah, imagine having to paint over the mustache too.
I don't know. He showed pictures of him without it, so we know he's not married to it.
Yeah, I think Garrett's facial hair is a little bit more newer than Joel's. But imagine if they were on that season 23 of the Afghanimals where they had to shave their or had to shave their. They would have never done that. Yeah.
No, it would have been tragic. I think we'd all be mourning if that happened. Like if you have to shave off your iconic facial hair. It's worse than having to shave your head for a fast forward, honestly.
We always play around with that because Lewis loves his hair. And his main thing that he brought for the race was his hair gel. And we always say if we get to a fast forward to shave our heads, I would already be shaving my head and Lewis would be screaming, "No, we cannot do this. Let's go back."
Oh, wait, so wait, if you had a Derek and Shalisa situation, if your bag rips open, Lewis, and the hair gel falls out, are you ditching the hair gel, or are you like, no, this is an essential?
Absolutely not. That's like having my map. That's like having my head on my shoulders. I will get that. Absolutely.
No one has seen Lewis with messy hair ever.
Oh, Lewis, I wanted to point out it was a good time. It was a good time to have you on the podcast this week because we had Busy pointing out that boys can be firefighters too.
That was a great moment, though. You know, that must be really cool. Yeah, I actually love that. Love that.
Yeah.
That you know.
We're about to get into some of these teams, but I'll be intrigued to get your thoughts on
Cool.
like Sunny and Busy of like, how does the firefighter lifestyle prepare you for the rigors of the Amazing Race?
Absolutely. So, do you want me to answer that now, Mike? Or
no, we'll put a pin in. Jess, we have anything else we want to talk about?
I'm skimming through. I think we're kind of at the point where we can segue into talking about the teams kind of individually with in terms of their performance, and we can get into some of these character moments at that point.
Yeah, I mean, second verse, same as the first. Let's start with our team that actually won a prize now in Rod and Letitia. So, what do you think, Lewis and Michelle? I mean, obviously, married couples dominating. Love to see it, but like 2 first place finishes in a row. Do you think that this is going to like lead to them being the leaders in the clubhouse moving forward?
We have very opposing thoughts on this. I'll have Lewis start.
So basically, when it comes to athletes, I just feel like the athletes come in here with some cockiness. I feel like an athlete that's been on these stages of bright lights. I feel like they just maybe watch a few episodes and they come on the race thinking they're ready. So when I see athletes come on the race, I don't rank them too high, because to be good on Amazing Race, you really got to know the race, and you got to watch the episodes, do your research. So I kind of ranked Rod and Letitia low at first. Now, have they proved me wrong? We'll see. I feel like getting first, this official mega leg, maybe they're they're a little bit more confident and maybe too confident. But we'll see. But after these first 2 episodes, I feel like Rod is a person that's very down to earth. He's more humble than I thought. He's not that crazy, very arrogant. I feel like it's too hard of a word, but an athlete like that. But they performing well. But do they know Spanish? Let's see. I think that's gonna be.
I don't think they know Spanish, but I'm loving them. I'm loving their energy, their communication. I think they're doing very well together. And this episode, we really see Letitia, right?
Yeah.
She was correcting someone on the podcast. She was talking a lot about how Rod is an athlete and he keeps trying to run a little bit faster. But from what I've seen is he pushes her a lot like Lewis would push me. I'm very short compared to Lewis, and he can run a lot faster and easier than I can. So during the race, he would run past me and he would motivate me to catch up to him. And I feel for her because she keeps saying, like, he's an athlete. I can't be as fast as him. But as I see it, like the race goes, he motivates her to push a little bit more without attacking her that she's not as strong as him.
And I want to say one more thing about athletes, right? Last time we had NFL players, Gary and D'Angelo. Once again, like, I feel like that team wouldn't have gone so far if it wasn't for that Mind 5 alliance. They were still trying to be figuring out sauerkraut to this day. So that's what I feel.
I mean, they had that girl power with him. So
they also barely made it out of the steel drums, as it were, in the beginning. But yeah, I really liked this episode for Letitia in general. This entire like mini storyline, right? Of like, I'm an athlete's wife. That does not mean I'm an athlete by proxy. So I'm gonna have trouble keeping up. But like she proved herself here. And Jess, I do believe she confirmed in our YouTube comments last week that is a one-piece bodysuit.
Yeah. I have all the respect in the world for running the Amazing Race in a one-piece bodysuit. That's amazing.
Like, so here's the little thing about the race. You cannot show your stomach because your mic goes on your stomach. So
where does the mic go if you're wearing a bodysuit?
Well, it had to. I'm sure she put it inside and they fixed it through the back. You just have to be able to put the mic around your waist. So I wish I brought a bodysuit. I'm not gonna lie. I had to change a lot of my outfits because a lot of them I brought sports bra and shorts because I knew that I would be very hot.
Interesting. Yeah, they don't want that fourth wall to completely crumble in the moment, but I'm feeling good about them. To Lewis's point, I don't know if they're necessarily, honestly, we'll get into them next. I probably feel better about like Ricky and Cesar doing well on a typical leg of the Amazing Race than Rod and Leticia for a number of reasons, but I can't quibble with the fact that, they finished first place twice in a row. That's, pretty dang remarkable, especially in a leg where people struggled so much with navigation. They were only one of a few teams to really never falter whatsoever.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be eating my words. They're a strong team.
They're a strong team. I think it is a good point. I think professional athlete teams we've seen flame out early so many times, but I think having a professional athlete and a non-professional athlete, that's a good combo.
Same thing with firefighters. Firefighter teams do not go far in the Amazing Race, but this firefighter did because of this beautiful woman race. So.
Maybe it goes back to like the same thing with identical twins. You don't want to be too similar. You don't want to have the same skill sets. One thing I worry about with them is that they are already talking about how they want to come in first on every leg.
Oh yeah, the old Jim and Misty, right? They're going for the thumb.
I like that. That's their competitive spirit, and that's going to take them far, and they're going to do good.
It could take them far, or they could get all up in their heads the first time they don't come in first, and then they get upset about it, and then they are so busy focusing on the fact that somebody else beat them that they're not thinking about the fact that they're still in the race, and the only leg you actually have to win is the very last one.
Yeah.
I'm happy for their sakes that the Express Pass didn't come back for this one, because they definitely qualify as that team, sort of like what we saw with Morgan and Lena last season, right? Of like, they're not going to use the Express Pass to get out of danger. They're going to use the Express Pass to try to get in the lead.
Yep, for sure.
All right, Ricky and Cesar, we mentioned them before. It's an interesting ending for them, because like you would imagine on the one hand, the storyline would be like, oh, we got again by Rod and Leticia. But they seemed very happy by the end of this, because it was almost like a moral victory. And they're like, yeah, we were steps behind a former NFL athlete. I think we're okay.
Yes. And I asked them exactly how far behind they were in that first leg. And they said they're only 2 and 3 minutes behind in this episode. So if they would have just maybe done the balloon task correctly and read the whole clue correctly on the balloon detour, then maybe they would have been winners in this leg. But they're a good team. They have great teamwork, great team chemistry. They're good with directions. Cesar speaks Spanish, so I think they're going to be a team to reckon with.
I would have actually loved to have seen them go up the hill the same way together. I was telling Lewis that they went up in different ways, but to see the both teams like trying to get first would have been really nice.
It would have been cinematic for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I love them. I think they have great chemistry. I think everything that they know of being a super fan, they've really studied what the race is, and they're making great decisions early on. And it looks like they can stay calm, they can motivate each other, and I really, really like them.
Also, I love Ricky bringing in his experience doing drag makeup, because I think Cesar was painted for the gods. He was ready for the runway. All right, and next up, and again, we're just going to keep on keeping on through the order that we talked about last week. It was really easy to make the presentation. Derek and Shalisa here. And I talked about this last week, Jess, right? That like Derek and Shalisa had simultaneously given me the energy of like, okay, is this our bickering couple? But then at the same time, like they were totally fine with it. It's clearly the way that they communicate. Did the needle move for you in either direction this week?
No, I think we saw the same intensity we saw in the previous leg. My opinion of them has not changed from last week either. My opinion is that these people look younger than I am, and they could be the parents of just about everybody else on the race, and that they're in amazing shape. And I love the way that they've been running the race so far. And yeah, you have teams where they can argue and they come unglued because of it, but you get the feeling they just argue with each other about everything. So it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Lewis and Michelle, you're used to people kind of from their couch hyper-analyzing a relationship from an outsider's perspective, but now I'll ask you to do the same. What do you make of Derek and Shalisa?
They've earned it, though. They can do that.
That's true, exactly.
But Derek and Shalisa, it looks like they're that team that they could argue, right, and still move on and like if nothing happens. Michelle and I don't have that relationship. If I start arguing with my wife, she gets very emotional. She breaks down in tears.
I do.
And that's not the best thing to do when you're racing. So that's not our type of relationship at all. But Derek and Shalisa, they're different from us, and that's working for them.
Yeah, on the race, it definitely for us, it worked that Lewis has very his I'm thinking in Spanish right now. I don't know why I'm thinking in Spanish. Maybe the episode, the hats. His attitude, he's the one that knows how to choose. He's very direct, and I'm very calm in this. So it works until he doesn't listen to me. And you can see that in one of the first episodes we were together, and I start to shut down because I want to be heard. So for me, Derek and Shalisa, I know that they'll never be hurt by anything they say to each other. But when there is something that they don't agree on, I'm wondering if this is going to be their downfall, when one wants to do one thing and one wants to do another.
Jess, I think also Derek and Shalisa were the source of some great Phil sass at the pit stop.
Yes.
He tells Derek, I've seen you taller and I've seen you less sweaty.
Love Phil sass.
Phil was on his game tonight, for sure.
I mean, it was a long day for Phil, too. Let's remember, he also had to be there at the end of the day. He got to kick back and relax, but at the same time, I could see he was a little... We'll get into this one particular interaction that was a little WTF, but he was a little punchy by the end of it, which I love.
Punchy Phil is the best Phil. And Mike, you and I know this better than anybody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So let's move on with, again, the copy-paste dynamic here. Really quiet week for Juan and Shane. Really, it was just like the only struggles they had was in the very first part of the very first leg, getting to the detour. Outside of that, they have been passing with flying colors, that color being green. I'm intrigued, Luis, Michelle, any thoughts about Juan and Shane right now?
They're badasses.
I think they're great. I'm wondering how Juan is going to do in this next episode, because he is Colombian. And, you know, usually on the race, when you're in either your hometown or somewhere where you really know the place, you don't do really good. So I'm hoping it's not that. I really like these guys. I think they get along with each other very well, and I'm rooting for them.
The editors faked me out with Juan and Shane. And I swear they're doing this just to troll us at this point. The very first confessional you see from Juan and Shane, they are sitting in pitch blackness. It is nighttime. And I saw that. I'm like, what did they do? How did they get tripped up? Why are they being interviewed at night? And they guess that was just like, that's where they were in the rotation. But I was very worried about them for a hot second until like the first half of this episode ended up being total nothing burger.
Exactly, until you watch literally every other team do something. Because that's the other thing, as we'll get into with our next team. Like, it really was a story of kind of like the top half roughly with Yvonne and Melissa, like being very capable and just kind of like being copacetic, not really having any difficulties. And then like every other team below them had some sort of struggle in it, even if the placements didn't change. I mean, Jess, we gotta talk about former federal agent Melissa.
Love me a former federal agent.
Yeah, Luis, Michelle, any thoughts about Yvonne and Melissa? Again, like I feel like the background of Melissa is probably the most we've seen of them so far.
Yeah, girls who like face painting. I feel like this is the team we probably got to know the least, or we saw in the race maybe the least. Interesting background from Melissa. Definitely added some points in my rankings after knowing a little bit more about her background. And Yvonne, she's Mexican, speaks Spanish, so I think they're gonna be a better team than I thought.
Yeah, she's very well spoken in Spanish. Like even through her accent, I can tell she's very good. And Melissa, very impressive. Not gonna lie, but I wish I could tell you that I remembered them a lot through the episode, and I can't even think about the tasks when they did them, and I feel bad to say that because I'm sure they're great women.
Yeah, the only thing is that, ironically enough, they titled the episode, and it was Melissa referring to how she follows the trust but verify method, where it's like, I'll only really believe you if you provide evidence for me. And it's interesting that she said that she's working on it, because to your point about like Derek and Shalisa, I could see a possible conflict come up in that way. If it's like Yvonne saying, no, we need to go this way, this is where the pit stop is, and Melissa could be like, I don't believe it. Do you see people around there? Do you see any possible landmarks? That could be an actual diverging point of the two.
I could see that happening, but this is the 12th team for me. It's the team that, like, if you ask me to name off all the other teams, this is the one I'm going to come up with last, because they're just getting so under-edited. I was happy to see the few things about them that we got this week, but it makes me a little bit worried for their continued longevity. I think I would you can't do it like you can with Survivor. I'd almost write them off as like winner candidates at this point, because we just haven't gotten enough of what they're doing.
They're getting the Liese and Michelle edit.
I know.
Yeah.
There we go.
To bring that back, I feel like I heard this 2 seasons ago when you guys spoke about
Like, who are they?
who are
Yeah.
we're gonna get far.
They confuse us with Aubrey and David all the time.
That's the thing is that, like, listen, you beat out Aubrey and David for me. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
in the little bits we see, they're doing a lot of fun stuff. We just don't see a lot of them because they're in the middle of the pack.
And what was the moral of that story ultimately is that even the teams that get under-edited have bigger personalities than 99% of the population because that's how you get on the show in the first place.
Thanks, Jess.
Well, I guess we can move on from a team that maybe is not necessarily making a big impact in this episode to a team that certainly did, but somehow, despite nearly crumbling in the heat, was able to make it in the heat to the top of the back of the pack here in Angie and Danny. I mean, unfortunately, just in a season where like these super fans just keep falling by the wayside, Danny might end up being the one to save us all.
He's the super fan supreme. P.S. Thanks for the shout out, Danny. I feel like if you say, I listened to podcasts and you're talking about The Amazing Race, I Googled it. We're like 5 of the top 10 hits on Google. So yeah, we know he's listening. We know you're out there.
Hey, Danny.
Danny's so impressive. I mean,
I'm obsessed with him.
Did you guys know
He's amazing.
he makes escape rooms? Like, yeah, he doesn't just, he's the maker of escape rooms. We're here we're the ones trying to get out of them and come out unlucky most of the time. But he is the creator of those. Like, his mind is just so impressive. And you could tell, like he's not gonna lose stress during the leg. He's very, very good at making decisions. His navigation is on point. They walked to the pit stop and made it before 2 teams. And that was so impressive. I'm so happy that they got their 6th place and they were excited about that. That was a great feeling. And I'm rooting for them.
Yes, and I love the fact that during the challenge, he told his mom, you can rest on the floor, you could breathe. I'm going to keep working on you, but you tell me how you feel. And I'm like, yes, that is the way to do it.
It's a little macabre. It's giving me very like 6 feet under vibes of like, okay, I'll do makeup on this body. And it's just sort of laying there. I mean, listen, I love me some Danny. I'm obsessed with a guy that hosts amazing races when he's 12 in his own hometown. But like, I'm kind of an Angie stan, maybe overall, because like the fact that she was able to push through this when clearly she was having a very, very rough time, but still put out one-liners like when Danny asked her if this is harder than childbirth, and she said, "Well, let's see what comes out." Like, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Yeah, we cannot go any further without talking about Danny's reaction when they get to the mat and Phil tells them they are team number 6.
Yes,
that was an all-timer for me.
Oh, he made me cry. If Danny has a cry counter, imagine how many times I double cry the times that Danny cries on the show.
Yeah, it's so amazing to watch, and it's tough because like I think on paper people would be like, too many histrionics, too many tears, but like A, it's at the end of a long day, it's back-to-back legs, and like B, it's a well-worn effort, and the fact that they could hit arguably their low moment right now where one of their team members is flat on their back, dying from heat exhaustion, and they're still able to make it to 6th place. I know from like a conventional perspective, they don't necessarily seem like frontrunners, but sort of like Ricky and Cesar, it seems like they're one of these teams that feels very confident in their skills, I think, and can be very underrated.
Yes. And that definitely shows, like I had mentioned before, they're on a foot race against Amber and Vinny, and who gets there first? Walla Walla. I love it. I love to see it.
Love it. And I think we're setting the bar high. Like if you want to come out here and present yourself as an Amazing Race super fan, I think like that's where the bar is. Like you got to like it as much as Danny does. And you know what? I don't even think I like it as much as Danny does.
Well, you mentioned
we need some shirts.
Exactly. Well, you mentioned it, Amber and Vinny. Let's get into them because I mentioned this before, but like a bit of Liese and Michelle energy to me, where like they were having troubles in that first leg, but they make like a pretty sizable bounce back into the middle of the pack. But then also they get majorly lost on the way to the pit stop. Jess, you had said last week that I think you and Rob both felt this way, that you felt this might have been the potential for the conflict heavy team of the season. Has that needle moved for you at all?
They are. I don't think conflict is going to be their problem. I think they have other problems, but I think I'm okay with their relationship as it is. Like, I think they talk to each other fine. They communicate okay. It's just that their sense of direction has really not been out in full force these first 2 legs.
Yeah, it's just we know how much research and studying this team has done, and it's kind of heartbreaking to see that they're getting lost at the end and they got beat by a team that walked to the pit stop, right? And just because it says "meet me under the bridge" doesn't mean it's the bridge that you've already been to, like. So it hurts to see that from Amber and Vinny, but I love how they bounced back. They didn't give up, and I still think they're going to be a strong team.
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to be a strong team, but I do agree with the bickering. I think it's going to elevate a little bit. I could see it in the face painting. He was talking good to her, but he's like, I need you to hurry up. And she was like, I'm going to do it the way that I need to do it. And then going down into the bridge at the very end, he tells her, "You should have looked at the clue."
Yeah, and I love that awkward shot of him trying to shimmy with the butterfly wings on as the camera focuses in on him.
But I still think, even aside from all of that, they are going to be a strong team. I don't think they're going to fall back behind again. They know what it is to be in the back now, and I don't think they want to be there again. So I think they will try and keep it up.
Are we getting rid of that?
Oh, I already took them off.
Do you want me to take all my nipple tapes too?
Never, Lewis. You keep those on for your own chest hair's sake. I mean, it's a valuable point, though, that I think gets brought up sometimes of like when you kind of had the fear of God in you from nearly coming in last place or getting saved by a non-elimination. I do think it changes the way that you approach things that can sometimes give you an advantage over, your Rod and Leticia's who are out in the lead the whole time and don't necessarily know what it means to struggle in the back of the pack.
Yeah, I'm sorry for taking this back a little bit, but how did you guys think about the whole Walla Walla telling them where the clue was? Because I understand you're trying to make alliances, but I'm wondering, is that a point where you could bring a strong team down? It's like, it's hard to weigh that out sometimes.
Yeah, I think I almost, when you're that far back, I would probably be a little more worried about telling another team where something was. I think like the one that I was kind of shocked was Ricky and Cesar not helping Derek and Shalisa. Like that one just seemed like that was kind of a no-brainer to me. They're way on front. They're 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. They don't need to be not helping teams at that point. Like that's not going to cost somebody the race.
I see the merits in it, and it's a bit of what Chris and Mary talked to me about with Juan and Shane, who apparently did actually help them after Chris and Mary helped them with directions in the last leg, where it's like, if you're like a little remora and you want a shark to kind of graft onto to hopefully benefit from a favor later on, like let it be a shark, and I could see on the one hand, yes, this could be a way to like take down a team. On the other hand, there's 12 teams left. There's a good chance that this is, unless you are competing for 11th and 12th place, this is not going to sink a team's chances. So like earn some goodwill in this moment, be able to maybe make some relationships, because as apparently happened with Juan and Shane, like it could pay out for them immediately, where Amber and Vinny are going to be able to help them when they're in dire straits.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't get a sense of like how much in danger they thought they were in that moment either. Mm-hmm. Like if they knew they were okay, yeah, help each other out all you want.
I mean, as a racer, I would say just ask for help no matter what, because you don't know who will help you.
Yeah,
that was our rule. Every time we would ignore people when they asked us for help. Well, it depends what placement we're at. If we're in the middle of the pack, we obviously teamed up with some teams when in the middle of the pack. But if we're running for first or we're close to last, we ignore them. They ask for help. And then we always asked if they could help us. So that was our rule.
Well, let's talk about a team that may have benefited from asking some other teams for help here. What is going on with Anthony and Bailey? I am mystified, but I love them so much.
Protect them at all costs.
Just like, I'll be candid here. I feel like it's been a while since we've had like this kind of team. Are they Cammy and Carly coded? Is it too early for me to say that?
I mean, it may be one of those I think it may be one of those like identical twin things because we have the twinnies and then we have every other identical twin team we've ever had on the race.
A fun drinking game. Take a shot every time they say dude.
My liver is not up for that.
It's just so interesting because, like, again, they have cool heads, which is tough in the Mexican heat, and like that does prevail. But at the same time, they looked, even before they got physically lost, they looked so mentally lost during most of this leg. When they get to the flags and they're just like, but what is what? Like, this is the best example of like, oh, you picked the wrong detour. And I love it because, like, I love that they keep surviving, but I don't know. Could you argue that they were the ones that got the most lost getting to the pit stop?
I need to talk about not knowing who Elizabeth Taylor is. Everybody on this podcast knows who Elizabeth Taylor is, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're just so much younger than us, though. I mean, I think they're early 20s, Anthony and Bailey.
Yeah,
so
I think they're like 25.
They are, let me just check right now. They're 26 apiece.
Can we talk about how the editors are having a hoot with them? We're bringing in some graphics. There's a point where they drop the clue and they zoom in on the route info. And then every time they come on, the little music comes on. The
slow carnival music.
Dodo music.
Yeah, I don't know why we got like the freeze frame on one of them realized that they left the clue behind, like, don't leave home without it. Like they were advertising amazing race clues.
I want it. I want it all. I want it every episode.
This is a team that we all know they're not going to make it far, but we're rooting for them because they're so entertaining and so fun to watch. Yes. Anthony and Bailey.
I mean, there's a non-zero chance they thought like Elizabeth Taylor was like a Mexican local, right?
Non-zero. Honestly, Anthony and Bailey being on this program makes the 90-minute episodes okay.
Yeah. I feel like the 90-minute episodes were made like specifically for Anthony and Bailey content.
Yes.
Keep them till the end, please.
Yeah, like, what are we going to do with this extra 30 minutes of content? Oh, we'll just give it to the Surfer twins.
All right, well, let's move on here. Sunny and Busy. They had a really eventful leg, Jess, where I'm still trying to figure them out because, they still maintain the same position that they were in last time. But I mentioned it before, I feel like they struggled the most with the tasks, maybe, but out of all the teams.
Well, I think that's just down to them choosing the wrong detour and not relinquishing the detour at the right time.
I mean, the roadblock, again, I feel like Sunny or Busy had some problems there. Now we can finally pull that pin out, Lewis. What do you think about firefighters on The Amazing Race?
Firefighters. It's rough to watch firefighters on The Amazing Race. And watching them too, I'm rooting for them because I don't think there's been a female firefighter team, right, Jess?
I don't think so, no.
So maybe that's the factor that's missing between firefighters. I'm probably the furthest firefighter that's gone on The Amazing Race because I have a female with me. So a double female firefighter team, maybe they're going to break that trend.
Yeah. Any thoughts about them in general in this leg?
In this leg in general, yeah. I mean, what can I say? The tasks, they didn't do too good on the task. Busy was a little bit, what's the word? She was trying to do the face painting too quick, and she just wasn't paying attention to the details. Overall, this leg, I don't know what to say about Sunny and Busy, to be honest.
Yeah, I think they just stayed too long in that detour, and watching other teams just pass them by. I give it to them because they stuck to it until they got it, but they did let a lot of teams pass them. Being girl firefighters, I truly don't know. I love going for girl teams, but I feel like I see Lewis and his friends and firefighters, and I feel like they always think they know everything. A little bit of know-it-all. So, yeah.
Really?
You got to have confidence to be a firefighter.
But one thing is, they are ruthless. Will they be some kind of like villain-ish? I don't see it in them and in their character and in their edit. but I do feel like they have tough personalities. So we'll see.
Yeah, it could be a very Robin and Chelsea, right? Like they're not exactly mustache twirly villains, but it's more so that they're not exactly, making the best friends with the other teams because they're really concentrating on what they're doing.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. They're
we
not there to mess around.
Not here to make friends.
Not here to make friends. Exactly.
We need to talk about Phil. We need to talk about Phil not knowing the difference between a hard ass and a badass.
Maybe it's a New Zealand thing, Maybe hard ass means something different down under.
And Busy was correcting him real quick.
I love that.
Loved it.
All right, well, let's move
Sean, that picture is I mean, yeah,
look, those biceps.
I know.
God, I'm excited. Well, let's move on here. And look, we love a lot of teams here. Anthony and Bailey are fantastic meme fodder. These are the stars to me of the Amazing Race 36 so far. Kishori and Karishma. I need them in as long as possible, Jess.
Oh, they're great. They're great, and they're so... I feel like they are stealthily actually pretty good at the race. Like if they hadn't made this one mistake, I think they would have finished a lot higher. And I like the way that they look at this. I think we're going to see better legs from them in the future.
Yeah, you're right about that. Kishori was the one that had some situational awareness when she realized that something wasn't making sense. And that's huge for the Amazing Race. And I love how chaotic they are. I love how loud they are. Karishma's always dancing and singing, and it's a great team to watch. And I hope they make it far.
Yeah, I think they're go-getters. They are not afraid of anything. They're rushing. That's the problem. They're rushing too fast into everything because they're so excited and they want to get everything done. And I think they realize that because you've seen that in their interviews where they talk about that they rush too into things. So hopefully they start to learn from their mistakes. And I do not want them to leave at all.
I mean, arguably the lines of the episode when they're attempting the flags task and Kishori's like, oh, we have to take a ladder. And Krishna says, no, you're 7 feet tall. You're like Shaq. Like Kishori just like looked at her like, I'm like Shaq. It's just so much fun. I mean, the dynamic is so interesting where, like you've said, Lewis, like it really is Karishma. We saw this with the roadblock prompt last time without the red the red handkerchief, and now this time with like, no, it's Iguana Bridge. Let's do it. Like it's interesting to see so far that I think what I've been seeing the trend is like Karishma is the one to really charge ahead. Sure that the choices she's making are the right ones. Kishori's been a bit more of the cautious one. I'm glad there's that balance that exists, but I am hoping we see a bit more of a neutral ground reach where maybe Karishma's starting to look before she leaps.
I'm curious if Kishori is actually that tall or if Karishma's just really short.
We met her. She's not like she's maybe 5'7", 5'8".
Karishma, I believe, says at one point she's 4'10".
Yeah, Karishma's 4'10". Kishori is like, I think everybody is Shaq to Karishma.
All right, well, let's get into in a leg full of not a lot of team shifting placements. The one team that has a big old black backslide. It is the fellow red team, the fellow Michelle. It is Michelle and Sean. And yeah, it was just sort of a pile of mistakes on top of each other, right? Where they get really lost out of the start of the leg. They go to the wrong bridge. And then they seem to do fine at the task. I think even passing, 3 to 4 teams when they actually do the roadblock, but then they get lost again going to the pit stop.
Yeah, I will say, though, I think, like, personality-wise, there's always that one racer that's like, you don't realize how funny they are because there are other racers that are more funny in a bigger way. I think Michelle is the racer to me that is stealthily the funniest person on this season.
I like. I'm watching them on their socials, and I really fall in love with their relationship, how they interact on their social medias, and maybe that's changing my mind. I feel like that makes me root for them a little bit more. But watching them race, that first leg was kind of like night and day. That last leg was not too hot, and yeah. What do you say?
I mean, I'm loving their attitudes. Yeah. Their interviews, they really talk about how the race can change with your attitude. Like it's not done till it's done. And of course, it's easy to say that after you've done the interview, after you've gone through the whole leg. But I think they have a great attitude towards the race in general. And I think that will help them get through tasks. And I feel like they can probably get very good relationships during the race. I'm a little afraid of them for next week because we do see that Height's scared where he doesn't want to move, and that scares me a little bit because heights, for people who are afraid of heights, is a very big thing, and I don't understand it because I love heights, but I think it's not looking good.
Yeah, I mean, you were side by side with Claire, right, during that roadblock as she was screaming trying to cross that ravine. I think that I totally agree that like they have such an interesting POV on life. To have Michelle so cheerfully talk about at the roadblock how like, you know, her life's attitude is all about how things could be worse and that like, you know, they dealt with infertility and now they have 3 children.
Oh,
like
yes,
these are clearly people that have dealt with adversity but have gotten through it and kind of jumped through life in a manner of speaking, part of the double Dutch comparison. And I can't help but love Michelle and Sean when they contribute to one of the oddest Phil interactions on the mat that I've ever seen.
I feel like Phil usually, you know, I've never heard Phil say "you're safe" like that before.
He was so confused.
And he was a little too quick to answer them. I feel like he could have messed around with them a little bit more, but
well, it's interesting because to your point, Lewis, usually when the non-elimination leg exists, right, just like he sort of does the Key and Peele sketch of like, well, how'd you think you did today? I have some bad news. You're gonna have to keep those sneakers on because you're gonna race to Columbia. Like try to do that sort of double reverse. Here, they almost do it to him, where Michelle's like, oh, are we last? And she's like, what? No, what are you talking about? No, of course you're not last.
That's so great. He's like, who said that?
I've seen disappointed Phil's face, like disappointed Phil face before. It was our first leg, and he just looked at us like, are you serious? And I'm just like, there's no way we're at the first leg. There's no way, Phil. And he's like, you're team number 10. I'm like, oh, thank God. But yeah, this is a different interaction. That was interesting.
Well, that was the problem was that, like, it seems like there wasn't anything that prompted it. Michelle comes in and goes, oh, no. And Phil's like, but what do you mean, oh, no? She's like, oh, we're eliminated? He's like, I know you double Dutch, but you were jumping to conclusions right now. I didn't say anything. I didn't even say hello. I didn't say, how are you? You came in going, oh, no. Oh, God.
Well, Phil likes to be the one who comes in at 11. If somebody comes in with that energy, he can't like yes and it. He can't escalate it. And you know, he likes to be the one who's like he's got the upper hand. I think it just caught him off guard.
I just can't believe Phil Kogan actually said the quote, who said you were eliminated? Like, what an odd thing for a host to say.
Maybe he was
a great episode.
All right, well, last but certainly not least, we memorialized them at the beginning. We can memorialize them at the end. Chris and Mary. Jess, any final thoughts on these two?
I think they got what they came for. I loved seeing them. They had such a good time. They're just really positive, awesome people with a great backstory, and I'm glad we got to see them.
Yeah, Lewis,
I love this team. I love the relationship. And Chris, man, he seems like such a great father to Mary, and I can't wait to meet him in person.
Yeah, I think they're great people. I hate that you say it that way, like they got what they came for. I wish they would have pushed more, you know, and there's times where we look back at Anna Lee where she pushed her father too much but wasn't too much. Like there's a certain point where you got to push a little bit because you're in a race, you know, and I love them and she's so good to her dad. You know, but I needed a little bit more effort.
You're right. What if she had more Anna Lee in her? Would they have won this leg? Who knows?
Would they have won this leg, or would Chris have been checked out by medical because she pushed him a little too far?
Well, that's the thing, though. Actually, on my interview, they put in the bid. They put it out there in the universe. Mary and Anna Lee returned to compete together as a team. What do you think?
I would watch so hard. I'd be so here for that.
Wow, that's a nice matchup. Didn't even think of that.
That's great. But that was the thing that I think really struck me about them. The thing I really respected was that Chris was talking about like how he wants her to go back and do it again with her competitive spirit. And it was like, yeah, maybe she could have had a shot at it, but what she wanted most out of it was to run the race with him. And I really respect the hell out of that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Mhm.
The way she spoke with him is admirable, especially under all that pressure. It's very easy to lose your patience. And she had that all the time with her dad. And it was very nice to see.
That's the thing is like for her, no matter how many legs they made it, what mattered was racing with the person she's watched the show with, who has been like such an important part of her life for so many years. I'm also glad in our interviews that they clarified the whole 1-bedroom apartment situation to make it seem like a little less odd than maybe we thought initially.
I would like to know that backstory, but I guess I have to watch the interview in order to know.
Check it out. If you want the architectural layout of Chris and Mary's 1-bedroom apartment, you can check out the interviews that we have going on.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, we're at the end of our rotation. I think any closing thoughts about this episode?
I don't know, Rob. Do you have something to say? I don't think he has anything else to say.
I love that he's here with us in spirit.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, were these like the two strongest legs to start off the Amazing Race? I don't necessarily think so. This one definitely felt, you could feel the length of it a bit more. That being said, I am excited for a change in location. I've said it a lot, but I do think that, now not necessarily giving these teams momentum, as tough as it might be, giving everyone a great big equalizer and putting them back on the plane. I don't know if they're going to do the return of like the group starting times like you all had in your season, but regardless, I think there's a chance we're going to get a little more variance to have some of the teams on the bottom do well and vice versa. I think it's been a good way to get to know these teams, but I'm excited for after these first couple legs and after, unfortunately, a couple teams that seem like a little out of their element and probably were not going to do well, that we can kind of move forward with, these 11 teams and see what happens.
Yes, not the strongest episode, not the best task, but I'm excited for what's to come.
I mean, imagine season after season coming up with new tasks, new things. I mean, we could definitely judge it, but
once again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I don't think it's the minds. I think they have the most creative minds that put this race together. Mm-hmm. But that charter plane is expensive. They can't do that every season. That's not going to happen. Yeah.
And they weren't expecting the hour and a half.
Yeah, and the budget is tight, so they gotta put some balloons together and face paint sometimes.
It's still not shaving a balloon, which I think is like the absolute like rock bottom of Amazing Race tasks. All right, well, Liese and Michelle, I hope we didn't exhaust like your entire library of things you have to say about this episode, because I know you also have your own podcast that is amazing.
Yes, all right. Our podcast, we do a podcast every week for the Amazing Race, Croqueta Chat, and we're just a bunch of clowns on there. We have a great time. It's filled with funny segments that we do. We bring on guests. We had our first episode of the season. We brought on 16 guests to give us their one and only one. And Jess was part of that. Mike, I'm sorry I didn't hit you up for that, but
we need Mike on soon.
And last episode,
I'll accept that invitation. I'll go to prom with you, much like Anthony and Bailey said with Vinny.
And then last episode we had Andrea on, and we recapped the episode, and we also showed her a clip of us. Andrea's, by the way, Miss Out of Towners from last season.
Now Andrea Molina, yeah.
Yes, and we actually put every single out-of-towner in one clip, and we counted every single one. So I'm not sure if we're going to do that with Bailey and Anthony's dudes this season, but we'll see. But come check out Croqueta Chat. If you love The Amazing Race, I promise you you're going to love our podcast. We're there to entertain, have a good time, and you'll love it.
Yeah, it is. It is really like, it's like attending a party every week. It's like going to a viewing party every single week.
And you don't need to gather your own balloons. They're right there for you.
There it is.
So, Mike Bloom, what's going on with you this week?
So as mentioned, I did my interview with Chris and Mary up at parade.com. Very fun time speaking with them. Of course, I'm doing the Survivor beat as well. Very polarizing episode that aired this past week, and a very polarizing interview with a very polarizing contestant as well. If you're a fan, check that out. I'm also having Kendra from season 45 on the B&B, which should be a hoot because I think she matches that energy perfectly. So you can check out everything I'm doing, including on my Cameo, and I will convince my wife to put on this face paint again if you all provide the shekels at a Mike Bloom type.
You got to raise your price. I think makeup should cost extra.
No. Listen, I'm for the people, Jess. I'll do anything and everything for money, as I said last week. I can't raise the price for the face paint.
He doesn't even charge extra to tape his nipples.
No, I charge less for that. That's a discount.
Gosh, Mike, a little secret. Louis actually ordered face paint so he could surprise you today, and it didn't come on time.
Oh my God! All right, next time. When I come on Croqueta Chat, you better paint your face.
We'll do that.
Gosh. So check out the rest of our Amazing Race content. Of course, our My Exit interview with Chris and Mary is already in your feeds, and of course, everything else you're watching, somebody in the RHAP universe is probably also watching it as well. So check out all of our content on all of our channels. And there's Rob.
There he is. He's missed. But we are so happy to have this opportunity. I think already, Jess, the experiment has become a great success, and I'm excited. Hopefully, we'll have another racer or racers on next week to recap our trip to Colombia.
Yep. I can tease we have some good guests that are 90% confirmed at this point. So very exciting stuff.
I'd love to hear it.
Cannot wait to do this all again. Liese and Michelle, you are welcome back anytime. You guys are amazing. And we loved having you.
Very much so.
Thanks for having us on.
All right. Thank you. And thanks to everybody behind the scenes who puts this on. Thanks, of course, to Mike for bringing the mirth. And
sure. That's a very generous term. Sure.
I don't know what to say about you at this point, Mike Bloom.
That's going to go on my tombstone. That's my epitaph. And apparently I look like I have one foot in the grave anyway.
Yeah, you definitely. I don't know where we're going next week. I don't know what they're going to make him dress as, but I can't wait for it. And I hope you'll all join us there too. Thanks to you all listeners, and we'll see you next week.
Love ya.
See ya.